Okay, so today I want to talk about conflict bringing clarity. So, in the modern world, with everything going on right now, with the plague that is going around the globe, with the depression that is coming, whether or not any of us will admit it, whether our politicians will admit it, or our financial advisors will admit it, or we will admit it to ourselves, there's a global depression coming on. I'm not really sure how that's not utterly obvious to people at this point. We've shut down borders, we've shut down entire industries. Um, I don't know how you have a good economy when you're locking people in their houses and not allowing them to buy goods and services. Don't worry. The economy is fine. People can't really buy goods and services. And like in the US right now, there's an actual unemployment rate of 14%. Who the hell knows what the real unemployment rate is? But it's okay. The economy is fine. Not really sure how you get to that particular answer. But I think it's important in these times to be thinking about not just the bad things that may come, but also the good things. Again, as a bad Buddhist, as a not very good Buddhist, I look at the world, and one of the big things with Buddhist philosophy is that it's simply events happen. Events happen. And then what you decide to take from the event is really what makes it good or makes it bad. So many times there are things that happen in life, and we think, oh, this is a good event, and oh, this is a bad event. But really, they are just events. They are just things that happen, and how we deal with those events really is what matters. I think about one of the greatest nights of my life. Truly, one of the greatest nights of my life is I was in this hostel in Pisa. So the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So, anyways, I was in Italy, traveling, doing my backpacking around Europe, and I gone to see the Leaning Tower of Pisa that day, and I saw it. Wasn't overly impressed. It was like, look, it's a Leaning Tower. Once you've been traveling through Europe for a few months, things like Leaning Towers aren't as impressive as they once were. But anyways, I wanted to go to the train station. And for whatever reason, the train's out. I had missed the last train out for the day. So I got stuck at this youth hostel. And the thing was, this was a youth hostel that was run by like the local church. Don't want to call it a church. I don't know, it was a monastery or something. Anyways, it was this local church, this local Christian, religious, Catholic, whatever institution. And so they ran a hostel. And it was a horrible hostel. It was a horrible hostel. Oh, it was just bad on so many levels. Like you go into the bathroom, and literally there's just like a shower head that was literally just sitting like right beside the toilet. And there were so many mosquitoes. There were so many mosquitoes, just mosquitoes everywhere. And and the beds were horrible. It was one of the worst hostels I've ever stayed in my life. It's just one of those like, it's gonna be a long night. So, anyways, you get a lot of these backpackers, these travelers. They all wind up in this hostel, and we're all looking at this hostel, going, "What the hell?" Like, truly, it was. In all my times, it has to be one of the worst accommodations I have stayed in. But the thing was, so we're all looking around, we're all swatting these mosquitoes. We're like, "What the hell are we gonna do?" And so somebody looks over and goes, "Well, hey, they got a grill." I'm like, "Oh, they got a grill?" And it's like, "Yeah, there's a grocery store or whatever about a mile down. So why don't we go grab some alcohol? Why don't we go grab some meat? We're gonna have a party." And I have to say, we all as a herd, we went all the way down to the grocery store. It was kind of cute because we had the women and the guys. The guys are getting like these piles of meat. I'll take a sausage and I'll take a steak. Like, it was actually, the meat was rather inexpensive for some reason. And so the guys are like, oh, and then the girls are very like, I will take a corn cob or whatever else. We got our alcohol. We came back. Oh, we barbecued up the meat. We drank alcohol, and it was an absolutely wonderful night. Literally one of the best nights, one of my greatest memories out of my entire life was that crappy hostel. It's just hard to explain just how disgusting that place was. But it was what we did with it. It was as we came together and said, okay, well, how are we gonna make this slightly less crappy? And literally, just an awesome memory for me. And so I think it's important to be thinking about that with life, is that so many things are, it's not that it's not that the thing many times is good or bad, but many times it's what we take away from that thing, like what we go forward from that thing or from that event, and how we deal with stuff, right? So I'm thinking about this with right now with the pandemic, the plague, with the depression coming on. And one of the things that I find is that for me, conflict brings clarity. And I think for a lot of people, conflict brings clarity. And I think there's been an issue in the US, at least in the US, for the past 10 or maybe even 20 years, maybe even through the last recession, where things have actually been pretty good, to be honest. I mean, we all like to complain. We all like to complain. Obviously, there's a lot of people complaining right now. But if you really look at it, things have been going pretty good for the U.S. over the past 20 years. Again, even with the recession in the middle. You look at the general living standards of people in the U.S. now compared to not that long ago, like in the 70s and the 80s, and things really are significantly better in a lot of ways. Again, things like internet access, things like air conditioning. Oh, you don't know. When I was growing up, like something as simple as air conditioning was a much more rare thing. My wife and I talk about that. How both of our parents, they would do the thing where the master bedroom would have the window air conditioner. None of the rest of the house, none of the rest of the house would have an air conditioner. It wasn't like the bedrooms had air conditioners. No, no, no. The master bedroom had the air conditioner. The parents would get a very good night's sleep on a night that was 95 degrees with 110% humidity. But the kids, well, they got to learn. They got to learn how to suffer in life a little bit. But you think about it now when you look at things like air conditioning and entertainment and clothing and so many things, life has actually been very good. And I think one of the problems with that, and it sounds weird to say, like what again, like what is good and what is bad? So isn't that good? Like, okay, so we've got more air conditioning now. We have things like air conditioning, vehicles are better, clothing's better, so much of this stuff is better. But I think one of the issues is for a lot of folks that you kind of get stuck in this weird, like, nether world of not really knowing what to do. Like when you're hungry, when you're hot or when you're cold, when you're suffering, it sounds weird, but it gives you a lot of focus. Like suffering can really refine your focus so that you know what you need to do. Again, when I think about when I was younger, and I was doing 18 credit hours in college. Plus, I was working full time. Plus, I was doing a lot of other things. The reason life sucked. Life sucked, right? Again, I was living with 15 people in a house and all kinds of other things. And so basically it allowed me to really focus, because if you look around and go, well, this life sucks, it allows you to focus on things like education and training and getting ahead because you want to get out of the suckiness, right? I think about when I created my little consulting business. Again, when I created my consulting business, I was so screwed. I had my MC, to be clear, I had my MCSE, I had my military service, I had a college degree at that point, I had all this stuff. But it was after the dot-com bust. And after the dot-com bust, nobody wanted to hire for anything. Like before, during the dot-com boom, they were hiring morons to run servers. After the dot-com bust, they weren't hiring MCSEs to do desktop support. It was so frustrating, right? But again, so I was renting a room in a house that was literally so close to the ghetto, you would say, in Baltimore, that when I went on a walk 2 blocks into the neighborhood, so it was like there's this neighborhood on I-83, and so I was in one of these houses that faced I-83 that was being gentrified. It was one of these neighborhoods that was being gentrified, and just me being me, I was just walking around getting my exercise. I walked 2 blocks interior, and I was asked by somebody if I was lost. Are you lost? Like, no, I am not lost. Oh, that was a hell of a time. But I was making $10 an hour as a file clerk because that was the only job I could get. And so when my little consulting, when putting my little poll type signs thing started working, it really gave me a focus to make that successful. When you're renting a room, when your entertainment, my entertainment at that time was literally buying a $10 bottle of vodka about once a week. That was my entertainment. But anyways, so being in that kind of place, when you find something that you can be successful at, you find something that you can make money at, it really it puts a fire under your butt, as they would say. And so once I started making a little bit of money off of doing the consulting work, I worked harder and harder and harder, and then that allowed me to, work 80 hours a week. Some months were good and some months didn't turn out so well. Those are different stories. But basically, being in that period of life, yes, renting a room sucked. Yes, all of these things sucked. But from a success standpoint, it was actually very valuable because I knew exactly what I was going for. I knew exactly what I was trying to get out of, and basically going in the direction of accomplishing. One of the things that I found for myself over the past number of years, though, is I've gotten to the place where, things are good. Things are good. And things are good in many ways, again, financially and relationship and all that kind of thing. One of the things that I found for myself, though, is that the direction that I'm going in, I've kind of lost course. Because in many ways, things are good. I can take a vacation when I want to take a vacation. I can do basically what I want to do. So I need to make some money. Well, how much money do I need to make? How do I need to make that? Like, there's a lot of that. Just like before, I was very, very focused. And over the past number of years for me, what I found is kind of a listlessness in success that I'm not necessarily happy with. I'm not overly happy about it. And it's that weird thing. It's a weird thing. I can eat whatever I want to eat. I can drink whatever I know. No more $10 vodka for me. Only the finest Cointreau or whatever else, tequila. But in that, there is also a listlessness that's also very frustrating. Again, for me doing content and me doing many things, some things kind of work, some things don't kind of work. And I think what I'm finding for myself as I'm sitting here looking at the plague as I call it, because, as I look at the plague, as I look at the massive destruction, just the massive damage it's going to do to our economy. I don't know what other people are looking at. Can I be honest with you? I have no idea what other people think is going on. But anyways, the massive amount of damages this is going to do to the economy. And I think one of the things it does for me is it's making me start to focus again, right? Because that's the thing. Like, when you have enough money in the bank, when things are getting paid, like for me being a content creator, I prefer more views. More views is better than less views. But does it really matter? Like, I think about that with my educational videos. Nobody watches my educational videos. It's a bit frustrating, to be honest with you. It's horrible. I do these videos talking about technology or whatever. I get like 1,000 or 2,000 views. And the thing is, I've kind of been in the position where it really hasn't mattered that much. A video gets 10,000 views, fine. A video gets 500 views, fine. A video gets 100,000 views, fine. At the end of the day, it really doesn't change anything for me, much of anything for me. And so I've been doing a lot of things, not really focused on how people like it. Not really focused if people essentially are buying the product or accepting the product or whatever else. Just kind of doing. And there's a weird listlessness to this. There's a weird lack of satisfaction. There's a weird lack of satisfaction when you do work and you're not really overly that worried about how it will be accepted by other people. At least for me, at least for what I found. And I think one of the interesting things is, like, up until this point, again, like I say, it hasn't really overly mattered that much. But as I sit here and I look what's going on globally, what's going on economically, when I do some basic math, do some basic 2 + 2 math, and I look at where we're going, one of the things it's making me do is actually start focusing on what is actually valuable. What is actually valuable to people? What are people actually consuming? What do people actually want? And that's kind of the direction that I'm going in. And there's a weird satisfaction in that. There's a weird satisfaction in actually sitting here and taking a look at my analytics, taking a look at my numbers. Because again, like if I went back 4 months ago, I looked at my numbers. I had the same numbers 4 months ago as I have now. I looked at my numbers and my numbers sucked. My numbers sucked. It doesn't really matter. My numbers suck. Who cares? Who cares? Like, well, okay. So look, hey, this month my numbers were better, and that means not really anything. Oh, look, this month my numbers are worse, and that means not really anything. Or you just look at the numbers, and the numbers don't correlate to much in the physical world. And then all of a sudden, when we start having these external, these macro events happen, all of a sudden it starts to become more and more important to really be thinking about what are you doing? Are you actually living up to your ideals? Are you actually building the types of things that you want to build? I mean, you think about it, is like how many people are cogs right now? How many people are just cogs in a system, and they don't really know what they're doing. They don't really know why they're employed. They're not even sure why they get paid. They're not even really sure why they get paid, right? And it's easy, right? Well, if you got a good job, if you're making a good job and you've got good benefits, it's really easy to just keep doing that day after day after day, right? And that's good. That's good. You've got a job and you've got a career and you've got benefits. But how listless are you in that? So you've got a nice car and you've got a nice house. Again, to be clear, having a house and having a car in the United States is very important. But again, there's a question between having a Yaris and having a Mercedes. At the end of the day, a Yaris gets you from point A to point B just as well as a Mercedes gets you from point A to point B. One of them is just fancier, right? And so how many people are just listlessly going through life because why not? And then you think about the disaster, you think about the plague, you start thinking about what if I really did die tomorrow? I mean, you think about it with many people that are dying from COVID. Many of them are young people. And again, not even necessarily 20s. I think of myself pretty young, but again, 40s or maybe 50s even. And you think about people that were just going along in life, all of a sudden they get this weird flu-like disease. They go into the hospital and they're dead. And again, this is where you look. So having a job with pay and benefits is good. And a disease like COVID is bad. But what if the fact that COVID exists makes you look at that job, makes you look at how you're living your life, and makes you ask yourself, if you died tomorrow, if you went into the hospital tomorrow, would you be satisfied that you had lived the life that you wanted to live? Again, and to be clear, I'm not telling you the life that you should live. If you want a mansion and fancy cars and all that kind of stuff, fine. I'm not pro or against anything. I'm saying in your own mind, are you living up to what you want to do? Again, or on the other hand, somebody that might be, again, listless, maybe somebody that's intelligent but is sitting there, smoking dope and drinking alcohol and not really doing much with life. Right? Again, you have something like COVID and you have what's coming, what's happening, and all of a sudden it's a little bit more questionable, especially if you have abilities, if you know you're smart, if you know you're capable. It's a lot harder to sit on your ass and smoke dope when the world is kind of falling apart around you, right? If the world is doing pretty good around you, if people are basically fed and systems are basically working, yeah, you're sitting in your basement, smoking dope, playing video games, what does it matter? But again, you start thinking about disaster, you think about things falling apart, and all of a sudden, somebody that's just been listlessly sitting in their basement, you start thinking, wait a minute, am I okay with this? I was okay doing this 6 months ago when it didn't really matter. Am I okay with doing this now? And then again, and you think about it, is smoking dope in the basement or whatever else, playing video games, is that actually satisfying, or is that some type of inertia? And by having the events happen in the outside world, does that break you out of that kind of listless inertia? So this is what I'm pondering. This is what I'm pondering. Don't ask me for an answer. The answer? I don't have an answer. If you're coming here for answers, oh, you're going to leave disappointed. Let's come here for more of these questions, more of these things to be thinking about. Because I just find this for myself, like as I sit here and I think about it, because we don't know. We don't know what the next year is going to hold. I mean, like in a very, very profound way. I don't understand what people are seeing. Can I be honest? Can I be honest? Sometimes in life, I wake up in the morning and I start interacting with people, and I have no idea what world they live in. It's like, do you live on the same planet I do? Is there some weird invisible portal that I walk through, and I walk through it and I'm talking to you and your planet, and then when I go home at night, I go back to my planet? Because I see a lot of people out there. They just don't really, and again, smart people too, like the smart people. They don't really seem to be, they don't seem to be as frightened of all this as I think we all should be. Because we don't. We literally have no idea what the next year will look like. Because again, I mean, with COVID, I mean, maybe there'll be a vaccine. Maybe there will. Even if they come out with a vaccine for COVID, this is the important thing to understand. Even if they come out with a vaccine for COVID, I've been watching it, and they've been talking about they might, if the vaccine works, so 9 yards, they could have 1 billion doses. They could have 1 billion doses by the end of 2021. So approximately a year and a half from now, they would have 1 billion doses. Here's the thing. There are 8 billion people on the planet. So there's 8 billion people on the planet. And if things go well, to be clear, if things go well, they will have 1 billion doses. On top of having 1 billion doses, simply having 1 billion doses doesn't really matter. You've actually got to get them into people. And so you're going to have to get 1 billion doses actually into people. And again, having a brand new vaccine that you start injecting into 1 billion people within a year, there's going to be issues. I am not an anti-vaxxer. To be clear, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but there's just going to be problems there. You look at the massive hit to the economy. Again, you think about the economy and how many people have lost jobs. Not just how many people have lost jobs, but then things like evictions have been put on hold. I mean, this is fascinating. It's fascinating. So you have people who own properties, who have mortgages on those properties. Then you have people not paying the rent. And so basically you have property that is being used by people that you can't evict. At the same time, you owe the mortgage payments to the banks. You have that going on. Again, when you think about the tourism industry and all of that, it's easy to just, oh, well, it's a tourism industry. But the tourism industry and the hospitality industry, that hits major manufacturers like Boeing and like Airbus. And then you just start to think of the follow-on effects. Again, as more and more people start using something like Zoom, right? If you start using Zoom and you're not going into the office as much, you're not buying coffee when you go into the office. You're not getting Egg McMuffins when you go into the office. Businesses don't need to rent as much square footage for the offices. Even things like vehicles, even goes, again, when you start thinking about manufacturing. Like, so my wife and I, we both work out of the house. I mean, like my truck. So I bought my truck back in 2015. So it's over 5 years old, and I've used it for hauling a trailer all over this country. 5 years old, hauling a trailer all over this country, and it's got like 52,000 miles on it. Again, the only reason it has anything near that is simply because of hauling the trailer, like literally all over this country. Like most of those miles are travel miles. My wife's car, since she works from home. Again, she has an 8-year-old Ford Focus, maybe like 70,000 miles on it, and I mean, the rate that she's going, she's got to keep that for another 5 years. It's weird. Like we honestly thought we were going to be buying an electric vehicle in like the 2020 or 2021 timeframe when we bought that. So we bought that used, and it was like, okay, well, we're going to buy that used, and then in 2020 or 2021 we'll buy an electric vehicle. But literally, she uses it so little. There's just we'll buy an electric. Basically, we'll buy an electric vehicle when that car is basically dead, which it's not going to be 2020. It's not going to be 2021. I don't know the rate that she's going, maybe 2024. And you think about that and you go, okay, well, what does that really matter? But think about if people are not driving as much, then there is simply not as much wear and tear on vehicles. Right? If you're putting 20,000 miles a year on a vehicle, then replacing that vehicle between 5 to 10 years makes a lot of sense. If you're putting 5,000 or 10,000 miles a year on a vehicle, all of a sudden that vehicle is going to last you a hell of a lot longer, which means you need to buy fewer vehicles, which means, again, what happens to the economy? And I think this is just something just to be keep in mind when we look at everything going on right now is we're in this weird government funded stasis, right? So we've got COVID coming in, we have all these things happening, and then right now the governments are just throwing money at people just to try to keep some vague concept of normalcy. But all that's going to collapse. At some point it collapses. It just has to. Whether it collapses in August, whether it collapses in September, whether it collapses in January, at some point that ends, and we've got to deal with whatever the future looks like. And when I sit here and I think about what the future looks like, it doesn't look like it did in January. It doesn't look like it did in February. And again, it may not be bad. It may not, and this is again the good and the bad, how you perceive things, Many people are worried about global warming. Many people are worried about climate change. Well, if we can start having more people using Zoom versus driving into the office, that's a hell of a lot less gas being burned, right? There could be a lot of good things that come out of this. Again, you think about this from an educational standpoint, where so much education has been based around having actual human beings in seats. Right? And so there's a lot of problems with that. So in order for somebody to get a good education, you have to be in the right school district, you have to have the right teachers. So we go into the future, if we can start having more online education, that may be much better for a lot of people. But then you've got to think about the disruption, right? So when you look at my educational videos, so the educational videos, they get no views in the YouTube world. They're still getting between 1 to 10,000 views. So think about this. I can sit down and I can do a class, and that class will take me, let's say, a day to produce. And for one day, I can educate between 1 to 10,000 people. It's a hell of a thing. And that education lasts forever. And that education just goes up, and it essentially lasts forever. That's good. That's good, right? No downside. What could possibly be the downside there? Well, the downside is if more education is created on the core subjects. So again, what I talk about, DIG or ARP, right? So when I talk about the things that I talk about, do my educational classes, I'm probably not going to put a professor out of business, right? Because I'm going to talk about rather specific niche things, and so professors are talking about wider concepts. But think about if somebody like me started teaching more and more the core subjects. The core subjects of English or language, wherever you're at, the core subjects of math, the core subjects of science, the core subjects of history and social studies. What happens when you can have a world-class education on a platform such as YouTube? What happens to the teachers? What happens to the educational establishment? When we have an educational establishment that's all based around people coming to a single location, sitting in front of a professor, right? There is an industry built around that. You have to have the professors, and again, you have to have the space, and you have to have janitors, and you have to have all of these people to provide education to relatively few, right? So 30 people in a room, it takes a lot of logistics to educate 30 people in a room. And when you say logistics, what that really means is money. It takes a lot of money trading hands so that 30 people can sit in a room and learn about something. So when we go forward, if we have more online education, if we have more pre-recorded education, if we have more of this type of thing, that is good. That's good, right? In many ways. So if you're in the middle of Alaska, you can now get a world-class education. If you are a poor child in the middle of Alaska, you can now get a world-class education. Amazing. What about all those professors and those assistant professors and the administrators and all of those people? They're now out of work. Think about all the college administrators. Think about all the college administrators right now. Imagine being a college administrator and asking yourself, really asking yourself, why you get a paycheck. Why do you get a paycheck? You get a paycheck in order to shuffle papers because in our weird, convoluted red tape system, you need people to shuffle papers so that a kid or an adult can end up being in front of a professor, right? Simply for somebody to sit in a seat and be in front of a professor, there is so much paper that needs to get shuffled. And that paper getting shuffled, people get paid money. Again, what happens when that kid can just go to YouTube, the equivalent of YouTube, pull up a video, and now you no longer need people shuffling papers? Think about that. Again, people managing janitors. Think about how much work goes into janitorial services for universities. Again, things you don't really think, like look at a university, and again, you think about professors and assistant professors and deans and all that kind of stuff. Do you think about the janitorial work? How much janitorial and maintenance work is required for a reasonably sized university? And then if everything goes online, right? Nobody needs to pick up my trash after me if everything is online. Nobody needs to deal with the facilities if everything is online. And like what does that world look like, and where is your place in that type of world? It's the question to ponder, something to ponder. So anyways, that's what I'm thinking about. That's why, again, like I say, fail normal. Like one of the reasons I'm doing fail normal, like it's funny, like with fail normal and these types of videos, is when I look at the statistics, an average like fail normal video, the average view time is well over 10 minutes. Depending on the video, depending on the subject, the average view time will be 10 to 20 minutes. So the average so you have however many people coming, and on average, that's how long they're staying. So they're actually coming and they're consuming the content. They're not just clicking on the content, they're consuming the content. Again, when I look at stats, when I look at my educational videos, when I talk about Raspberry Pi or Pi-hole or Dig or whatever else, yeah, the average view time is about 2 minutes. So you know how I was saying like 1,000 or 2,000 people watch the video? Well, 1,000, 2,000 people click on the video. And then they get about 2 minutes through. I created a 40-minute video for you people. I created a 40-minute video showing you how to probe DNS. And people stuck around for 2 minutes. But again, that's something to be thinking about. And it's an important thing to be thinking about. Like, again, like with what are you actually providing people? Because I think this is where people can get very, very confused and very frustrated is, you know, when I talk into a camera, right? Me talking into a camera, there are some types of products I produce that are valuable to people. And some types of products that I produce are just not that valuable to people. It's still me. It's still much the same process. It's still cameras and a encoding computer and uploading and all that kind of thing. But in certain circumstances, what I do is actually really appreciated and wanted by the world. Then other, again, slightly different niche is something that people don't really care that much about. And I think that's an interesting thing, like to be thinking about, like, and you think about that like as a teacher. So if you're a teacher right now, you should be very scared for your job, right? Because again, with everything going online, as soon as things go online, then it becomes a lot easier to have pre-recorded things. And so one of the questions to ask is if you're a teacher, let's say a grade school teacher, you can be a teacher for a class, or you could be a teacher online, or you could be a tutor. And I think, well, that's one of the things to be thinking about. It's like, well, okay, if everything's going online, so everything's going online, and as things go online, you're gonna have more and more pre-recorded things. So what is actually going to be the most valuable thing for your time? Is it going to be simply talking into a camera towards a bunch of people? It's very commoditized. Or maybe if you focused on tutor work, I suppose. Like, so the kids that don't quite understand the math lessons, right? Instead of trying to teach 30 kids all the exact same, 30 kids that are at entirely different levels, the same thing, coming up with a tutor type business where you bring in people. So let's bring in 10 kids that are having essentially the same set of problems. And now let's spend 2 hours, charge the parents $50 a piece. So that's $500 for 2 hours or whatever. And let's focus on that specific problem and get these kids through. And then you bring the next set of kids in and they're having problems in a different area. And so you start thinking about, okay, well, if we are getting into this hyper commoditized world, then maybe the place to focus on is the hyper niche world. And again, where are you actually valuable? And you might find out that that's a hell of a lot more enjoyable. Again, if I was a teacher, one of the reasons I haven't really worried about getting a master's degree and going off and being a professor, a lot of people say, Eli, you should go off and be a professor. And that's actually not bad advice. That's not bad advice. Here's why I don't want to do it. Because I cannot imagine being in front of 30 kids, adults, whatever else, when most of them really don't want to be in the class. Like I have been in enough technical education to know most people that go to technical education don't really want to learn. They don't really want to learn. They don't really want to build anything. They just want a paycheck, right? And those people piss me off. Those people piss me off, right? So imagine if you're a teacher and you're in this environment where you have a couple of kids that are really excited and really interested, and then frankly most of the kids you're basically babysitting, right? So again, you're in that stasis. I am a teacher. I'm getting pay. I'm getting benefits. At least 3 kids in my class are learning something. But there's a listlessness to it. You're a teacher, but are you really an educator? Are you really an educator? You want to say teachers and educators are the same thing, but honestly, in the modern world, teacher and babysitter might be more synonymous, frankly. As you think about, again, as the world changes, it's like, okay, now everything is being disrupted. Now everything's been thrown into chaos. And so that's bad. That's bad because you don't know about your paycheck. You don't know if you're going to get laid off. You don't know about all these things. But maybe it forces you to figure out what you actually care about. Do you want to be in front of 30 kids all day that basically don't care about any of this crap? Or does it force you to actually become an educator, to focus on finding the 10 kids that are actually interested in this material and actually being able to sit there and communicate with them and talk with them and be able to educate those kids? Again, maybe in a tutor program or an after-school program or something like that. I know after-school programs can make a crap ton of money. I know they can make a crap ton of money. And you might actually be much more satisfied by doing that type of thing. And again, it goes back to the results. What is the result? If you have 30 kids, only 3 are learning, you're babysitting the rest, again, you're not really educating them. You're a teacher, but you're not an educator. But you don't really focus on not being an educator because you're getting your paycheck and you're getting your benefits and the kids come in every day and, well, this is what you're doing with life. With what's happening, it may make you focus and go, well, wait a minute, if I'm an educator, shouldn't I at least be trying to interact with people that want to learn? Again, they still may be stupid. Let's face it, some kids are rocks. Some kids are rocks. But a motivated rock. Wouldn't you rather be trying to teach a motivated rock versus an unmotivated genius? Right? It might actually go, oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, let's actually focus on this education type thing. And where can you go from there? So anywho, those are my thoughts. Those are my ponderings. We'll see what happens. I'll see. I know next year is going to be is it even going to get to next year? I don't know. It's a hell of a time period. It's a hell of a time period. So anywho, with that, I'm gonna go off, do some work, drink some more coffee, trying to figure out what metrics I need to focus on. Because yeah, you get to that point when things start to matter, right? Again, that's when things are paid, when the mortgage is paid and the food is paid and all of that, you just do your work. Again, it's important for me to work. I like to work. I like to do things. I can't sit on my ass all day. I'm one of those people that my wife and I have figured out. If I am not working, if I don't work for 2 weeks, so about 2 weeks, somewhere between 14 to 15 days, I simply become a colossal asshole. That's how it works. Like if you put me on a beach, if you put me on a beach for 14 days, on the 15th day, I become a colossal asshole. Just how it is. Like I need to be building, I need to be creating, I need to be doing something. Right. And the interesting thing though, so I've been doing a lot of work, and again, have the results actually mattered? Again, that's the important thing. Like, why are you doing things? I do work in order to keep moving, but a lot of the results I haven't really paid attention to, and so now it makes me focus. So something to ponder, something to think about. See you all at the next video.